My name's Dave Barnett, and I'm one of the support representatives from Metalogix. And basically today's meeting is on the configuration for the StoragePoint large file upload feature. This feature is basically been added to the This feature has been added to the product to give us a few pieces of functionality that you don't get from SharePoint out of the box. So just to jump right in, first of all, this will allow us to overcome the SharePoint 2 GB upload limit or the web application 50 meg upload limit, depending on how you have things configured in your environment. It's great if you have large video files, image files, or any kind of specialized documentation that doesn't normally fit in SharePoint. Gives you the ability to upload that and share it with your colleagues, make it accessible to everyone that you need to. This is achieved by uploading directly to an existing blob store. So if you're familiar with StoragePoint or have some familiarity already, the process is essentially that content that's added to SharePoint is plucked from the content database and pushed out to a endpoint on a file share or another type of third-party endpoint where it's stored. We're able to, with our large file upload feature, simply create a tag that we put on the SharePoint site and point out right to that endpoint location without ever having to add this file to the blob store itself. This is available for users with contribute or full control permissions. Any users with greater permissions like site collection admins or farm admins will be able to see this as well. It'll show up right in the ribbon as an additional upload option, although the UI is a little different between 2010 and 2013. This is included as a feature for StoragePoint for users with SharePoint 2010 and 2013. Unfortunately, it's not included if you're using 2007. There are just some API limitations that we had a little trouble working around, so that feature may be pushed back, but likely we're just going to keep the 2010, 2013 moving forward. And lastly, this feature is powered by Microsoft Silverlight, so you get some nice drag and drop functionality built in. To enable the large file upload feature, you basically just need to navigate up to your general settings in StoragePoint, open that up, and then scroll down and look for the large file support option. And turning this on is about as easy as flipping that option from no to yes. This will automatically make any of your existing storage profiles or any of the sites within your existing storage profiles begin displaying in the document part of the ribbon the option to do large file uploads. And I'll demonstrate that shortly just so we can have a quick look. This will also allow you to, from this general settings page, we can also update our content migrator job to make sure large files are being moved from our temporary storage location, which is called our system cache, to the endpoint that you've specified for that site. This is not required if you're not doing an asynchronous externalization style, so I'll show that briefly. But if you are using the asynchronous system cache location, the large files will all go to that location first, and then you can choose whether you want the additional processing of moving those along, or if you just want to kind of collect them in one location. And the last thing I'll cover before we do a quick demo is just a couple of points users should know. So just to start, this large file feature is achieved by creating an ASPX file in SharePoint. So if you look at that file, they'll be kind of left in your library referencing large file. It's an ASPX file, and it's set up with a content type called StoragePoint document link, which is custom, something we put together that fits the feature specifically. We don't recommend that you modify or change this content type, as it could break the ability for it to load some of our details or to access that file from SharePoint. So this content type is also not subject to the same metadata requirements normally placed on document content type. So it is custom and unique. Now the files that you upload with the large file feature don't necessarily need to be large. So if you're not sure if you're over that limit for SharePoint, you can upload any file in there. Files that aren't breaking the web application upload limit or the SharePoint 2 gigabyte limit there will behave just like something you uploaded through SharePoint itself. So they'll be directly sent to the content database, the system cache, or your endpoint, kind of according to your normal StoragePoint rules. You get externalization details on large files, just like you do for normal content that's being externalized with StoragePoint. These show up with a separate menu, though. It's called Large File Detail. And that'll show you where they're currently located in your endpoint, as well as the GUIDs that reference the item. So you can track it down if you need to. The usual StoragePoint details link is available, but that will just give you details about the ASPX page. So in most cases, that'll just be in the content database and won't give you too much as far as the size of the item or its current state. And then my last slide here for you is that if you do need to edit a large file or you'd like to add an additional version, we can recommend that you check the file out, open it, save a copy local, and then take that same file, bring it back into SharePoint, and upload it through the same UI, the large file UI. I'm not going to be able to, again, use the normal SharePoint operations for this because it is a little custom. And that'll either overwrite the current file, or if you've created a second version, it'll overwrite that second version. And then lastly, the system cache is used if you have an asynchronous profile setup. And that is the location where these large files will be initially placed. If you've set up your system cache and you want to use large file uploads, we recommend that you do not have compression or encryption turned on for that endpoint or for that location because that can cause some issues as the files are being processed. So we've seen errors in the past. So normally I'd recommend leaving those two off for the best overall performance. So from there, I'll go ahead and show you guys a quick peek at the feature itself. Just jump on our server here. This is SharePoint 2013. And in here, as I mentioned, you just have your StoragePoint feature. Go into General Settings. And General Settings right at the top here, we can see our Content Migrator job. Default is to not include large files, and I'll show you what the result of that is. And scrolling down, we'll find the Large File Support feature. And right now I have this enabled in my environment. We have one profile set up, so I can pull that up for us as well. So here I am on my SharePoint site. I'll go into my document library. And in here we see all of our normal items. If we were to look at any of these items, because StoragePoint is active, we have a StoragePoint details link on all of them. Large files show up with this, as I mentioned, custom content type. And when we open up the same contextual menus, we have the StoragePoint details still, but again, this will just reference the ASPX page there. And then we also have the large file details. And if you've used the StoragePoint details before, this looks pretty much the same, but this will give us the ability to see all of the details about our file, including the specific file name and where it's currently located. As I mentioned, I have that Content Migrator feature turned off to ignore large files. So we can see right now I've uploaded this file and it's currently sitting in our system cache. And we'll go take a look at that location shortly. But it does show us the item size just so we can reference that as we need to. And again, this is externalized, so it's a stub. Versioning is available as well, so we can switch between versions and download the different versions of those files as we need to. Alrighty. Now to actually use the feature, you'll find it when you're in your document library under the file level options. In 2013, it shows up right as one of the other ribbon buttons. It's a drop down in 2010, so it's a little different, but our guides will give you screenshots for all of those if you wanted reference for 2010. And just selecting, wrong browser. Just reload that. Sorry, this guy prefers IE. It works with Chrome there, but as you can see, there's a little bit of a graphical hiccup sometimes with the Silverlight, depending on your version. So again, I'm back in that same document library. I'll grab our large document feature, and it pulls up just this full screen option, which you can resize if you need to. It allows us just to drag and drop files that we might want to upload. So just to quickly show you how that works, let's pull my archive file here and just drag it right into SharePoint. Shows up on my list, and when I'm ready to go, I just click the OK button, and this will begin processing. We can watch it load right into SharePoint. Now as this guy processes, it will be visible on our system cache. So I'm back on my server where my system cache is located. And in your system cache, you'll notice a new folder appear once you start using this called LFS, or our large file feature. Oh, make sure that file is loading okay. We can see my 2 versions of our large file are currently in there. I may have errored on that one. This is 90 megabytes as well. So. You know what? I think I may have picked a corrupt file for this one. Go switch it over to our control point one. Rather than make you wait there, basically any kind of erroring or problematic issue while the uploads are going through there, we can pick up in ULS. But once your file lands, it will show up here with this custom content type, as I mentioned there, and you'll be able to reference and check it in your system cache. And then once you have it set up to migrate, that file will be moved from the system cache out to whatever endpoint you happen to have set up for it. So essentially that'll get your feature up and running. This requires kind of the same permissions that you would use for any of our externalization jobs there. So you'll still want to make sure that your timer and app pool accounts all have the rights to be able to write out to any of those endpoints. But again, as long as you kind of reference most of those key points I mentioned there, especially making sure compression and encryption are turned off for the system cache. That's one that a lot of folks will get caught on. Then this is usually fairly easy to get set up. So with that, I'll jump in and answer some of the questions that we have marked in here so far. Alrighty. So the first question is if the large files with counting against site collection reported storage. These will, I believe, not show up in any of your SharePoint specific reports. They go in as an ASPX file with almost no size at all to it. So I don't believe you'll be able to see those metrics. The content database item that's entered for those doesn't put in a dummy for the size of the item itself. We did have to make that custom StoragePoint view so that you could see the size of the file that's externalized. And when they are externalized, it's an accessible file. As you can see in here, this is just pretty much the exact file that we uploaded. It's got the blob reference on the side, on the end there. But okay, and the next question that we had here, what is considered a large file? So StoragePoint will automatically consider a file to be a large file if it's breaking one of the normal SharePoint upload rules there. So in the case of our test that we were looking at, this particular web application is out of the box, so it has a 50 megabyte upload limit, but you can configure that up to 2 gigabytes. Right now, anything over 50 megabytes is considered a large file in this environment. So 50 megabytes and up for here, but you may have a larger limit specified in your own environment. So if you have a 2 gigabyte limit on your document library, anything over 2 gigabytes will be considered large. And then Tommy asks, is that adjustable? I'm not sure which feature you were talking about on that one. If you want to put in another question, I'll answer that. Right now, this does not work on, the question is if this will work on SharePoint 2010 if you're using the 2007 templates, and currently it does not work in that configuration. So you do need to have the 2010 ribbon in order to be able to see the links that we've developed for the large file upload feature there. Alrighty, and then there's a question between the difference between the large file upload and the file upload. The biggest difference is just when you're using the large file upload, that's our specific solution that we've added, and that will automatically kind of trigger StoragePoint's code to intercept the file and understand that it needs to go directly to the endpoint and not head into the content database if it breaks the SharePoint rules. Alrighty, and then there's a question here, is there a way to configure the file size for large files? Right now the feature is pretty basic. There's not a lot of configuration that you need to do with the large file upload feature. We try and mirror the SharePoint rules as closely as possible. So the idea with this one is just when it's turned on, anything that should go to SharePoint will go to SharePoint, and anything that's larger than that is going to be externalized. But we don't have a specific file size configuration option there. Oh, cool. And it looks like I answered Tom's question there. That's good. Alrighty. And another question here, if this was available in the 4.x versions of StoragePoint. I think this was developed towards the end of the 4.0 version, so you may see this in 4.3. But it's definitely in our latest builds there, the two versions of 5.0 that are out and supported. So if you're not on those, there's a lot of reasons to upgrade, but that would definitely be one if you don't see the feature currently. And the quickest way to check is just right on that general settings page to see if you have that option to enable large file. Alrighty, does it click on files? So the next question here is, does the click on the file show check out and edit? Yeah, I'll go back to my library here. So for your large file, you have oh, this looks like it was checked out currently. There is not a check out and edit option here. Let me plug that guy in. So right now you get just kind of your default options. The checkout option is just to change the state of it and to make sure that the versioning is referenced. But you'll essentially be overwriting the file when you go to add it back into SharePoint. So what we usually recommend is just getting that versioning set up correctly and then downloading off the version that you want and uploading it back once you've done the checkout. Alrighty, and then question here is if there's a load on the web front end when uploading a large file such as 2 gigabytes or larger. There's some, the load though is typically, balance your SharePoint environments, especially enterprise ones, handle a huge volume over the course of the day anyways of requests for downloads and uploads. So we don't normally see any kind of impact to performance when there is a large file being uploaded or downloaded. If there's a large number of them going on at once, that it can be a little bit of a draw on the resources available for the network. But this will just kind of stretch out how long it takes for those processes to work rather than slow down the environment itself. So it may just take a while for you to download or upload that item. And will Silverlight be supported in the future? Yeah, Silverlight is our go-to for this feature. So as long as Microsoft's supporting, I think that's going to be what StoragePoint will be utilizing. If there's any kind of change, obviously we'll always respond to those. Alrighty, and then I think there's a question if this can be automated. So if a user doesn't have to choose whether they're going to pick a large or a small file. Basically, you just want to utilize that web application upload limit. That's all we look at when StoragePoint's making its decision. So you just essentially would want to configure that in accordance to how you want this to work. But StoragePoint will always reference specifically what's set in the web application upload size. And then next question here is if there's any connection timeout needs to be set up in IIS. So in our documentation for this, you actually will find a link to a Microsoft knowledge base with a few best practices for IIS. So if you are setting this feature up and you're getting kind of unhandled exceptions or long load times and nothing's coming back, then definitely refer to the large file upload documentation, and that will have a couple of again, Microsoft knowledge base articles you can take a look at as far as making adjustments to IIS to better support the feature. But yeah, that was a good question. That's definitely something worth pointing out. So the version that I have installed right now is StoragePoint 5.0. So that's what I've been demonstrating here. That was a question that was asked here. So this is all kind of the latest. It's still just all nested within the UI for central administration. Nothing's changed on the front end as far as how flashy the product looks, but we've made a lot of improvements to the back end performance in each of the subsequent builds we have. Okay, there's quite a few questions. I don't know if there were any last items folks wanted to bring up. I'll stick around for a couple of moments here, but hopefully this was helpful or answered some questions. And as always, if you need any follow-up, feel free just to shoot an email into email_support@metalogix.com, and we can take a look at any of those specific items more closely. And then additionally, there's a couple of pieces of documentation, even a specific document just for the large file upload that's available on our website at metalogix.com under our support options. So it looks like that's all the questions we had for today. So I'll wrap things up, but thanks again for your time, and I hope everyone else has a great day.